We have got some dilemmas on our hands tonight in daily fantasy baseball because there are a lot of high salaried guys I want to use, which is great. We love having options. We can pivot without being dumb, stuff like that. But it also means we have to stay under the salary cap, and that might not be super easy for tonight. So we're going to break down which of those studs I want to prioritize, how to jam in all those studs by identifying some good value plays and getting you ready for a Tuesday night slate in daily fantasy baseball. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire, here to break down Tuesday night's 12-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 p.m. Eastern for today. If you look at the weather for this slate, pretty much every game is chilly. The only games on the slate with temperatures above 70 degrees are in Arlington for the Rangers and Diamondbacks and Houston for the Astros and Giants. So what I would say to do is upgrade bats in that game, for those two games, Arlington and Houston, and then keep everyone else pretty neutral, which means also not bumping down Oakland like we typically would because their temperature is in line with most of others, not bumping down other spots where it may be colder because things pretty level as far as temperature outside of Arlington and Houston. And unfortunately, one of our top pitchers for tonight is in Arlington for one of those games. So we'll break that down, let you know what to do, but overall, pretty neutral slate with regards to weather. We'll dive in, talk about that pitcher, talk about the studs to prioritize, and more in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. Later on today, Brandon Gadula and I breaking down the Wells Fargo Championship from a PGA DFS perspective, letting you know our top guys in the field for an elevated field for this week. Search for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating as well. The biggest horse race of the year is here, and there's no better time to get in on the action on FanDuel Racing because right now, all customers can get a no-sweat derby bet up to $20. That means you'll get up to $20 back if your win bet doesn't win. The FanDuel Racing app is super easy to use, safe and secure, and when you win, you get paid fast. So don't miss out. The Derby is coming up this Saturday. Just visit racing.fanduel.com for your chance to get a no-sweat Derby bet up to $20 on FanDuel Racing. That's racing.fanduel.com. Age and residency restrictions apply. Offer valid on first Derby win wager. Refund issued as non-withdrawable racing site credit that expires on June 12th, 2023. Restrictions apply. See terms at racing.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Pitching preview for this Tuesday main slate, Zach Gallen comes in with the highest salary. He is at $11,800. Garrett Cole is at $11,500. Joe Ryan against the White Sox, $11,000. Hunter Brown comes in at $10,200. Anthony DeSclafani pitching well. He's at $10,000 against Hunter Brown. Freddie Peralta at Coors Field, mind you, is $99,000. Graham Ashcraft, $98,000. Julio Urias is $94,000. Yusei Kikuchi comes in at $92,000. Patrick Sandoval, $9,000 flats. With Tyler Wells, Matt Strom, Tanner Bybee, Tanner Houck, and John Gray, the others, at $8,000 or higher. Now, as you can hear, some really good pitchers today between Gallen, Cole, Ryan, not to mention all the others. And all those guys have high salaries. Specifically, those three are at $11,000 or higher. But even with three good options, I think that Zach Gallen needs to be our top guy on the main slate for tonight. We haven't gotten to talk much Gallen so far this year because he hasn't been on weekday main slates, so haven't gotten to dig in too much, but he is here today, and woo buddy, when you dig in, I think we can realize it's time to go hard at Zach Gallen for tonight. Gallen has been unreal so far this year, and honestly, I'm not really sure what has unlocked this new level for Gallen. He is throwing fewer fastballs. He's down to 41% from 48%, which is good. And his changeup usage has increased a bit. That pitch is good. So maybe that's all of it. I'm honestly not sure. But whatever it is for Gallen, it's working because in 6 starts, he has a 36% strikeout rate. His skill interactive ERA is 2.46, and his swinging strike rate is 13.9%, up from 10.1% last year. He's doing that while not walking anybody. The contact profile, good, but not great. And I think that is fine when you're doing everything else as well as he is. Now, granted, Gallen has done this against pretty low levels of competition. But honestly, for today, it's not bad either. Facing off with the Rangers, they've been pretty good so far this year. But if you lump in last year's data versus righties, 96 WRC plus on the active roster, and they will strike out. 24% strikeout rate in that time, too. I have Gallen projected for 8.6 strikeouts, which is a very big number, but I think it's high for a reason. So I'm fine ranking Gallen first for tonight and feeling pretty good about that based on the matchup, based on what he's been doing, all that combined. Zach Gallen will be my number one pitcher for tonight. Now, between Ryan and Cole, we do have two really good contenders for the number 2 spot, but Garrett Cole gets a low strikeout Guardians team, and I think that's enough to give Ryan the edge here. Ryan's facing the White Sox, who have struggled so far this year. Even when you include last year, they have a 98 WRC plus against righties with a 142 ISO and a low walk rate. They're not a high strikeout team, but their strikeout rate in this sample is still 5 percentage points higher than what the Guardians will be giving Garrett Cole today. And Ryan is pitching really well. He has a splitter now, which he did not have previously. In 5 starts with that pitch, Ryan has a 3.18 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 29%, and he's not walking anybody. Now, Ryan is letting up hard contact, but it matters less when they don't make contact as often. This is his first time facing the White Sox this year, so despite it being an interdivision matchup, no familiarity issues here. I have Ryan projected for 7.4 strikeouts. Cole, given the matchup, is at 6.9 strikeouts, and that's enough for me to give Ryan the edge. And Ryan also lower salaried than Cole. I think that's enough to make him a good play for today on our number 2 stud. So among the studs, among the really good options, I will go with Gallen 1, Joe Ryan 2, followed by Garrett Cole. A lot of times here on the show, I can feel like a buzzkill when it comes to talking about top prospects coming up, because it's like, it's a tough transition going from the minors to the big leagues. A lot of times the underlying data in the minors might not be great. So a lot of times the prospects get lumped in the stacking section. Today, I think I'm willing to give a young guy a try. And that guy is Tanner Bybee for the Guardians facing Garrett Cole in that game we just discussed. I think that Bybee is actually the top value play for today at $8,400. As mentioned, Bybee's facing the Yankees, and when there's no Aaron Judge on this roster, you can target pitchers facing them. The Yankees active roster has a 77 WRC plus against righties this year. It's been rough. Not drawing a lot of walks. Their league average strikeout rate. And Bybee looked good in his debut last week. He went 5 2/3 innings. He let up 1 run, 8 strikeouts, no walks. He had a 12.1% swinging strike rate, and he kept hard contact in check. He checked every single box that you want from a guy making his debut. Now, that came against the Rockies, which is a very easy matchup, but the Yankees might be that too when you take Aaron Judge out of the equation. In that first start, Bybee went 91 pitches. His high in the minors was 81. So I think putting him at 90 or so again today is probably pretty fair. I've got Bybee projected for 5.1 strikeouts. That's nowhere near Gallen, Ryan, not even close to Cole either. But so I'd rather spend up. But the studs discussion we were having about how there are a lot of high salary guys I want to use, that's true at hitter too. So if you want to use Mike Trout, you want to stack the Brewers at Coors Field, maybe you give Bybee a look. Not totally opposed to doing that, given how many high salaried batters there are. So to me, he's at least an option. Despite how many good studs there are, you can get your value at pitcher as opposed to hitter. I don't mind that. It's not my preferred route, but I think he will likely be in my player pool for today. So Zach Gallen, Joe Ryan, Tanner Bybee, the top 3 pitchers for me for tonight. Mentioned that the Brewers are at Coors Field. Let's dive in now to the stacks. Not as into the Rockies facing Freddie Peralta, but the Brewers, to me, very stackable, facing Ryan Feltner. And Feltner may be better than perception. I still think we should stack against him, but do want to give him credit for what he's done so far this year. Feltner last year had a 5.83 ERA. Doesn't seem like he is very happy with that because he's been throwing a lot more changeups this year, and it does seem to be helping quite a bit. The hard hit rate allowed is way down for Feltner. His strikeout rate is up as well, and it's been a good thing. I'm not sure if it's enough to make us not stack against him at Coors, but it's been very good. ERA 4.68 for Feltner, skill interactive ERA 4.73, expected ERA 4.12. And when you stick numbers like that at Coors Field, I think we can stack against it. That's especially true when the other offense is decent. And the Brewers are 107 WRC plus against righties, good amount of power. So I like what Feltner is doing, but I'm still going to be high on the Brewers tonight. So with the Brewers, I think they're the number one stack. Might not be easy to get to if you're going with Gallen as a top pitcher, but we can talk about some value plays throughout the rest of the podcast. With the Brewers, whenever I'm stacking them, I always prefer them against a righty with relatively even platoon splits because that lets us be behind Willy Adames, who I want to use. And that's true with Feltner here. In his career, righties have a higher slugging percentage and ISO than lefties against him. And that might not stick because it is still a small sample. But to me, it says we don't need to downgrade righties facing him as much as we would for some other guys. So I prefer it this way. Think it grades out really well in terms of this Brewers team specifically, and it makes me feel good about them for tonight. So if you got the salary, the Brewers, very much worth it. Now, for our number 2 stack, we're going to talk about the Angels. Angels facing Steven Matz this week or tonight, and Matz last week faced the Giants, and we talked about stacking against him there. The Giants, okay against lefties, pretty solid. The Angels are killers. And I think with Matz now facing them, we should stack the Angels here. And Matz, in his defense, was not awful in that game. He allowed just 2 earned runs, but that came across 4 innings. He had 3 walks compared to 3 strikeouts. 9 of 15 balls in play he allowed were hard hit. Now for the full season, Matz has let up a 49% hard hit rate, which leads to a 6.23 ERA. His expected ERA is 5.36, and he gets the Angels tonight. We have a 130 WRC plus against lefties on the current active roster since the start of last year. 207 ISO. They hit a lot of power, and it's not just Trout hitting for power against lefties. Ohtani can too, despite it being a lefty. Hunter Renfroe's obviously there. There are a lot of guys here who can do some damage. So if we were stacking the Giants against Matz last week in San Francisco, we should stack against Matz here with the Angels, and I think we should do so and rank the Angels number 2 behind just the Brewers at Coors Field for tonight. Now, typically when I'm stacking the Angels, you're looking for some value plays here. I don't get super jazzed to include Luis Rengifo in my Angels stacks, and he may not play today, so I might not get to here either, but he actually does have some pop against lefties. Rengifo has a 230 ISO against lefties since the start of last year. He has a 38% fly ball rate. So again, he might not play. There's a chance he's not in there because he's not an everyday guy. But if Rengifo does wind up playing for the Angels, he's $2,600. He fills second base, shortstop, and outfield. I like that a lot. So I am desperate for value. Rengifo gives it to me and does give at least some power against lefties. So I'd be willing to go there if he plays today for the Angels in this stack. Finally, for our third stack, let's talk here about the Twins. They're facing Michael Kopech, and last year, Kopech outperformed his peripherals in a pretty big way, where the gap between his ERA and his seal interactive ERA was large. This year, seems like regression is hitting, and I don't think that's fluky, and it makes the Twins a quality stack here in this third spot. Across the entirety of last year, Kopech had a 3.54 ERA, but his skill interactive ERA was 4.73. Now, if you look at the expected ERA from Baseball Savant, it was pretty good too, and it largely supported the results he had, but he let up a lot of hard contact, which is kind of a risky way to live. This year for Kopech, the velocity is up, which you would think would be a good thing, but he's still letting up a 58% hard hit rate with a 44% fly ball rate, and he hasn't been able to overcome that this time because so far Kopech's ERA is 7.01. His expected ERA is 9.78, which is even worse than the results have been. Now he's facing the Twins, and they're still not a prolific offense by any means, but they are at least getting healthier. Byron Buxton finally getting his swing back as well. And I think it means we can buy into the peripherals on Kopech and stack against him with the Twins here. Another value play we can turn to tonight is Max Kepler. I talked a couple weeks ago about his increased fly ball rate, and that sample is now expanded, and it's still sticking. Kepler against righties this year, 43% fly ball rate. It's helped him put up a 241 ISO. Not at target field for tonight, which is good because it's a tough spot for lefties to hit for power. So get him out of that park. Put him in Chicago. It is colder, but again, it's cold pretty much everywhere for tonight. So I think this all adds up to Kepler being a good play for tonight at $2,700 and being another value we can turn to when trying to get to Zach Gallen. The Twins, their salaries have increased a bit, but Kepler at least still a solid value within this Twins lineup for tonight. So his top stacks for today: Brewers at Coors Field, the Angels, and the Twins. Things to watch. Did want to include some more value plays here potentially, given that Gallen's salary is very high. We want to get to Trout, want to get to Adames, guys like that. So looking for other values. Don't hate me, but I think the A's might be in play. They're facing Bryce Miller in his debut, coming up from Double-A. He is a fly ball pitcher who doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. So the A's could be viable. They stink, but, could be in play. Ryan Noda can hit for some power. His salary is $2,900. Ramon Laureano is fresh off the injured list. He's 28. Connor Capel and Esteury Ruiz will run a bit. So they've got guys with some upside at least. I think they could work. Not super enthusiastic about the A's, but got to do what you got to do to get Gallen in there for tonight. The Orioles are facing Ryan Yarbrough, who's really struggled so far this year, not getting many whiffs, a lot of fly balls, and that's hurt him in the results category quite a bit. The Orioles, not a good spot for value. They've been too good so far this year to give us value plays, but Ramon Urias could be a viable one-off. $2,600 for him, can fill some tough-to-fill positions, so I think that Urias could be a standalone play here in the Orioles to make things work. Finally, Yusei Kikuchi is still lining up a lot of hard contact and fly balls. The results have been great so far. It could eventually bite him, could get some solo home runs, stuff like that. He's facing the Red Sox tonight. Kike Hernandez, Justin Turner could be good value plays. They're not the highest upside guys anymore, but they're at least viable against Kikuchi as righties, lower salaried. I think that could work. So check out the A's, check out the Orioles, check out the Red Sox as potentially some spots to snag some more value hitters for tonight. Let's finish up with the dinger calls for this Dinger Tuesday over at FanDuel Sportsbook. The boring one, it is the Angels against the lefty, which means I could go hyper boring, go Mike Trout, but I will go a smidge less boring, like the most small amount less boring you could possibly do, and do Hunter Renfroe. I know Matz is not a huge fly ball guy, but Renfroe provides plenty of that himself. Hunter Renfroe plus 350 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Not the best odds to go deep, but it's a boring home run call. We'll go with that. So Hunter Renfroe, the boring home run call. For the fun one, I am going to go Max Kepler. I believe in the increased fly ball rate. I hate the weather in Chicago, but again, don't have a lot of great options in terms of weather for today. Kepler's odds to go deeper plus 330, so actually pretty gross from that perspective. So not recommending Kepler as a bet, but more fun home run call for DFS. So we'll go with Hunter Renfroe and Max Kepler as our home run calls for today on this blessed Dinger Tuesday. That is all the time that we have here for today on the Solo Shop. But again, we are back again later on today, breaking down this week's PGA DFS slate for the Wells Fargo Championship. Get that by subscribing to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got any questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. I want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for this wonderful Tuesday night. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to break down Wednesday's slate. This has been the Solo Shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.